Welcome to the We Chat Tech podcast. I am your host, Vytas Jelinskas, and my co-host, Ben Whitmarsh. We are joined today by a very special guest. His name is Steve Wade.
Steve Wade was one of the founding engineers at KSOC, a Kubernetes security startup. Before this, Steve has held multiple platform engineering positions in leadership and as an engineer at the likes of UnderWrite Me, Mettle, and more. During these roles, he's leveraged the concept of GitOps to provide self-service platforms to developers. Steve is a very experienced engineer in the cloud native realm and also an ex-professional footballer, which we'll get more into in a bit. So yeah, welcome, Steve.
First off, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's great to be here. So yeah, as Ben alluded to, I'm Steve Wade. Yeah, my journey has taken me from being scouted as a professional footballer at 4 to being a cloud native evangelist, consultant, and trainer. So today, I'm the founder of the Cloud Native Club, where we're revolutionizing learning, the learning community. As a consultant and trainer, I've seen firsthand the success of this fast-paced industry that we're all currently working in. And it really comes down to not individual brilliance, but collaboration, adaptability, and continuous learning. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, I'm excited to challenge your assumptions, and on this podcast offer a fresh perspective. Let's dive in.
Awesome. So let's dive into that. So, Steve, just run us through how your journey, sort of from that unconventional journey from being from a professional footballer to transition into that tech industry.
So yeah, my journey from professional football to the cutting edge world of cloud native technology is pretty unconventional. I like to think about it as like the ultimate long pass, or like a career pivot with both the kind of unexpected and transformative at the same time. So, like I just said, I was scouted at 4 years old, and football quickly became kind of everything to me. It wasn't just a game from that moment; it was my whole entire world. Like everything revolved around it. Thoughts of playing, practicing, dreaming of stepping onto the biggest stages. And then this early career taught me like invaluable lessons, right? Discipline, focus, the unwavering belief that we can achieve anything with enough hard work. But then life, as it always does, has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? So at 18, after kind of years of dedication and dreams, and a career-ending injury changed everything. Like suddenly my world was basically turned upside down. However, it was a curveball that forced me to reassess and adapt to what I wanted to do. So this setback actually became the catalyst for a new beginning. So I found myself drawn to the tech world, which I know we're going to get into, particularly cloud native technology. But surprisingly, the lessons I learned on the field prepared me well for this kind of new arena that I'm currently in at the minute. So who knew that learning to dodge opponents would prepare me for dodging code bugs in the future? So the pitch, the football pitch, and the tech world may seem miles apart, but they actually share common ground. So both require strategical thinking, adaptability, a drive for consistent improvement. And my unconventional path taught me that past experiences can be leveraged to create unique experiences in any field we pursue, whatever that may be, no matter how different they seem and other people seem to think they are. So today I'm on this podcast as living proof that it's not just about where you start, but how you navigate the turns and where you choose to go next. My journey from football to tech is a story of kind of passion, resilience, and the surprising ways that the lessons from one world can completely reshape another. I don't want to speak and give too much away, as I'll dive deeper into the journey in upcoming talks. If you're intrigued and want to know more, I'll be speaking at CEVO Navigate, SRE Days London, and CDK UK in the coming weeks and months. And these talks will explore this transition in much more detail. So I hope you'll see you there.
Awesome. So in regards to that as well then, Steve, so what were some of sort of the biggest challenges you faced during the transition, and like how did you overcome them?
So I think there were several pivotal moments that led to my transition. So one was obviously the injury, right? When I had that injury, I was sidelined for 18 months. I couldn't put any weight on my feet. I was basically just sitting still, and my parents were helping me do absolutely everything. So during this time, I started exploring, coding out of curiosity. My father was in IT, so I kind of had a little bit of a leg up in that instance. And I was immediately captivated by its potential to create and innovate, and that's something I was really interested in. And then another crucial kind of moment to me was attending my first tech conference. Like, seeing the passion and creativity in the tech community reminded me of the energy in the football changing room before like big matches. And it was then that I realized technology could offer me a new arena to channel my competitive spirit and desire to make an impact in this world. And then kind of lastly, the pivotal moment was having a conversation with a mentor of mine who had successfully transitioned careers slightly differently. They weren't going into tech, but they'd done a big transition. And it helped me see that my football career wasn't an end, but it was actually a beginning. And it was a unique foundation upon which I can build something extraordinary in a brand new field, which is what I'm doing today.
Very inspiring, Steve. Very inspiring. Obviously, both Vytas and I both were playing good level of football as well, up to about under 18. So we know the feeling of being in and around academies and the sort of setbacks you can have in that environment, how pressurized it is as well.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows that. So yeah, I think tech's a little bit less pressurized, I guess, in a way, in that respect. So I think that's a good thing. In terms of advice, Steve, what can you give young aspiring professional footballers that may have suffered a career-ending injury at a young age, or simply because they're released because they're not good enough, I guess?
Yeah, this is a subject that's quite close to my heart, as you could probably imagine. And to any footballer, and I'm not just going to say footballer, I'm going to say any athlete in general that has an unexpected end to their career, I want to share some perspectives that might help you navigate this challenging time. This perspective is very much about football, but I think it kind of translates to other sports as well. So I want to take a moment to look at a number. So that number's 0.012%. So that's the percentage of football players who make it from an academy to actually becoming a professional footballer. So that's a staggering statistic, and it kind of shows how tough it is to reach the top in football. And like the three of us know, right, many talented players have gone and given everything, but the reality is that only a tiny, tiny fraction of them actually ever achieve that dream. So that's not me saying don't pursue a football career and it's not worth it, but it does highlight the importance of being prepared for other paths where those skills you develop in football can lead to success in other fields, like just as they did for me in tech. So with that in mind, I've got a set of advice that I would give people. So the first one is allow yourself time to grieve, right? It's okay to feel lost initially. Like, the end of a football career, whether due to injury or release, is like a significant loss. And give yourself permission to process those emotions, like however long they take. But as well as that, recognize your transferable skills, right? The mental toughness, the discipline, the teamwork, the ability to perform under pressure that you developed playing football or any sport are actually invaluable in any field, not just technology. These are life skills that you gain when you're at academies. You may think they're footballing or sport related skills, but they're not. They transcend and transfer into life in general. And then I would say explore new opportunities, right? Start exploring different fields that interest you. Take courses, attend workshops, try and shadow professionals in various different industries. And your next passion might actually surprise you. I was lucky enough that I had a leg up and saw what my dad was achieving in IT. So I kind of naturally progressed there. But that doesn't mean that there's not other people out there that you can go and talk to, right? That I have had some of the most impactful conversations of my life just from attending conferences and meeting someone in the hallway and someone recognizing my face, right? And that turns into job opportunities, that turns into them being mentors, etc., etc. And I think you should embrace your unique background, right? Your experience in football sets you apart. It gives you kind of a unique perspective that can be your greatest strength in a new field. So like, don't shy away from that and actually use it as your advantage. And then build your network, right? Seek mentors, join communities like the DevOps Society and others in fields that you're interested in, and just be open when you go there about your journey. Just be transparent, learn, listen, share your experiences, right? Many people will be fascinated by your background and willing to help you with a transition. Like, invest in your education, right? It sounds obvious, but whether that's formal education, self-directed education, acquiring new knowledge and skills will be crucial in any transition that you're doing. And then some less obvious ones is kind of stay physically and mentally active, like maintaining that discipline you've created in football or sport. Like physical activity can help manage stress and actually keep you focused as you navigate through this transition. And then just be patient, right? Remember, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. And mastering a new field takes time, which we'll get into, but be patient and persistent, just as you were when you were developing those football skills. You can't do 50 keepy ups straight away. You start with 5, then you go to 10, then you go to 15, right? And you build up slowly and slowly. And it's the same when you're learning something new. And then my final one, and I did this myself, is seek professional help, right? Career transitions can be incredibly emotional and emotionally challenging. And feel free to speak to someone that maybe that's a therapist, maybe that's someone outside of your family, maybe that's a family member, to help you through the process. And really remember that your journey in football isn't the end. It's actually a powerful beginning. And these skills and mindsets you've developed can be foundations for success in different fields.
Wow, fair play, Steve. I think one thing for me as well, knowing the tech market quite well, naturally, I think sort of working long hours is quite standard as an engineer, especially in like the leadership roles, Steve, when the money's obviously getting better and your responsibility goes higher. How do you deal with making sure you have regular breaks and exercise and those periods of your career? Because that's something that I speak to a lot of leaders about within tech, especially that's they don't always get time to switch off and get outside and go for walks and play football, run around, let steam off. What advice do you have for those people?
So it's an interesting one, right? It's a double-edged sword. It's, do you work to live or do you live to work, right? And once you go into the mindset that you work in order to be able to have a better life for you and the people around you, you and the people around you, right? So you as well are included in that sentence. So you need to put yourself in the best position whereby you can be the most valuable asset inside and outside of work. And really, one of the things that I always do when I start a new job is I go straight to my calendar and I book a lunch break, and I just have it from day zero of landing. It's 12:30 till 1:30. You're not going to get hold of me. I'm out the office from 12:30 to 1:30 from day one till the day that I leave. Obviously, that's going to flex a little bit, but it sets your standout early doors that people know, look, I'm dedicating this hour to my lunch break. Maybe I go to the gym, maybe I go for a walk, maybe I do absolutely nothing and just watch some live sport on TV. It doesn't matter. It's that time when you kind of break away from what you're doing. And then the other one for me is set yourself as out of office when you'd like to finish work. So if your contract or you've negotiated that you finish at 5:30, then from 5:30 until 12, you're out of office, right? It immediately notifies people on email, immediately automatically rejects meeting requests. And you have a nice polite response that says, look, I'm out. This is out of my core working hours. I'll get back to you tomorrow, or please reschedule a meeting during these core working hours. And if you do that from day zero, it will slightly affect people early on, but they'll actually understand the reason why you're doing it. And then you've set yourself up to say, look, these are my core working hours. These are not my core working hours. And this is where I have my own life. And this is where I work from day zero, from the minute you join. And they would be kind of my main pieces of advice. And then really in the evenings, one of the things that I've done for many years is I've structured something called my ideal work week. I don't know if people are familiar with that or not. The idea is that you start a brand new calendar insert whatever calendar service you use. For me, it's Google. So I create a brand new calendar called Ideal Work Week. And I set up blocks of time for my ideal work week. So when am I going to go to the gym? When am I going to go on date night? When am I going to do things for myself? When am I going to go and play football with the boys? Right. And that's my ideal work week. And then what I do is I try and translate that into every week moving forward. And then subconsciously, at the end of every week, like every Sunday, I look back and say, like, how close was I to my ideal work week? Oh, I was a little bit off here. We didn't do date night, for example. Okay, well then next week I'm gonna prioritize doing date night, and maybe I'll drop something else. Maybe I won't go to the gym 4 days a week. I'll go 3 days. And it's just about having that flexibility, but also keeping yourself accountable for what you've committed to, both inside and outside of work. I think we're very good at committing to what we do inside of work. We're not so great at committing to things we do outside of work.
Couldn't agree more. Fair play, Steve. In terms of obviously all the careers you could have gone into, Steve, there's obviously a lot of different areas you can work within in the UK and abroad as well. Why tech? Why was that an interest for you? Obviously, apart from your dad, being in the industry, you've covered that a bit already. But apart from that, what really, got you going within tech?
It's interesting. Like, tech to me just felt like the most natural evolution, right? Coming from a background in professional sport, and we've kind of touched on this already. Strategy is important in sport, teamwork's important in sport, and adaptability is crucial. And I saw these kind of same elements reflected in the tech world, especially with kind of cloud native technologies. And I was drawn to tech because it was fast paced, like constantly evolving, and it requires problem solving on a daily basis. And you're doing that when you're playing professional sport. And it felt like the same kind of challenges that I was facing on the pitch. The only difference is I'm sat behind a computer or a monitor, sorry, in a slightly different arena. And what really sealed the deal for me was the impact that technology has on, transforming industries, businesses, and even like people's lives. And I wanted to be part of something where I could learn, apply the skills that I developed in football and kind of contribute to something that shapes the future. And I think that, like, in tech, every day feels like a new opportunity to grow. And that excitement really resonates with the passion I've always had for tackling challenges head on, whether they be challenges on a football pitch or whether they be life challenges or technical challenges.
Fantastic. Okay, and in terms of obviously your your career within tech, Steve, obviously from the start of your career to now, being a very experienced contractor, shall we say? How's that path been for you, and where's that taken you to this point?
Yeah, it's interesting. So my path from technology has kind of been less of a straight line, and I'd say more of a zigzag through a complex maze. Um, like everyone else, right? I started at the bottom. Um, as an engineer fixing tech debt and bugs that no one else wanted to fix, sweeping the floors essentially. Um, but one of the things I quickly realized is that the traditional like climb the ladder mentality was pretty outdated. And instead I adopted what I call, and people know that know me well, I call the trampoline approach, which is basically bouncing around between different areas of technology, gaining a breadth of knowledge that ultimately proved more valuable than deep expertise in a single area. And like, here's the first hot take that I'm going to give you guys, is that I think specialization is actually overrated. The future actually, I think, belongs to generalists who have the skill set and ability to be able to connect the dots between different domains. And my journey to becoming a cloud native trainer and consultant and evangelist wasn't about being the best coder or the most knowledgeable of a specific technology. It was about understanding the bigger picture and translating complex concepts into digestible insights that others could easily understand. And I think the most successful people in tech, in my eyes at least, are those who can bridge the gap between technology and business needs. And I've kind of positioned myself in that space. And it's a space that I think more professionals in technology need to aim for.
Isn't
Awesome.
that in a way what DevOps is as well? Oh, sorry, Vytas there. Isn't that in a way what DevOps is, I guess, as well on that topic?
I think, yeah, DevOps is really, like a cultural movement, right? It's developers and operations putting their arms around each other and actually being on the same page and collaborating more effectively. I think what I'm specifically kind of talking about is the ability, specifically as a consultant, to translate these complex concepts, right? If we just take Kubernetes as an example, right? Kubernetes is a concept. Let me start that again. If we take Kubernetes for an example, Kubernetes is a complex beast that has many knobs and dials that you can press, twist, pull, whatever you want to do with it. But it's really about understanding the business value that you're trying to achieve and actually what parts of the puzzle are best for you right now in where you are in your journey to make the biggest difference. And it's really being able to provide a portfolio of possible options, but being able to think on your feet and actually choose the best options for the business and the customer that you're currently working with, because like everything doesn't look like a nail, so we don't always need a hammer.
Awesome. So, Steve, diving a bit deeper then. So, you specialize in building self-service platforms for developers on Kubernetes, right? So, can you explain what that involves and why is it essential in today's tech landscape?
Yeah. So, building self-service platforms for developers, specifically on Kubernetes, is about creating an environment where developers can autonomously and productively, without needing to understand the complexities of the underlying infrastructure, right? So it's kind of abstracting Kubernetes away enough for them to kind of get on with their day-to-day tasks, but obviously they need to understand pieces of the puzzle, but not all of it. The way I like to think about it is it's kind of like building a high-performance car that anyone can drive, and no one needs to be a mechanic, but only a certain section of the platform engineers need to be the mechanics, but the engineers and the developers don't. And kind of why I think it's essential right now is in today's tech landscape, speed is everything, right? We're all aware of that. And companies that can only deploy slowly and infrequently will be left behind. And I think we're seeing that today. But the controversial part is that most companies, I think, do Kubernetes incorrectly. They treat it like a magic bullet without addressing their underlying organization and processing issues. Like an excellent self-service platform isn't just about the technology. It's about changing how people work together. It's breaking down silos between developers and operations. But it's also about creating a culture of ownership and responsibility. And in my view, like if your DevOps transformation doesn't make some people uncomfortable, then you're probably not doing it right.
Fair play, Steve. Fair play. In terms of your motivation, Steve, to focus around Kubernetes and also self-service platform. Sorry, was there like a specific project or experience that really inspired that direction for you?
I think my focus on Kubernetes and self-service platforms wasn't really inspired by a specific project, but more by a growing frustration with the status quo. Like too many talented developers that I saw in many different companies were spending their time fighting with infrastructure instead of creating the thing that they're really there to do, which is create business value. And most companies don't need Kubernetes. There's the second hot take. They need to deploy and manage applications reliably and at scale, and Kubernetes is just one way to achieve that. And for many organizations, it's actually overkill. But for those who do need it, doing it right can actually be a game changer. And I chose to focus on this area because I believe it can have the biggest impact, right? It's not just about making developers more productive, but fundamentally changing how companies deliver software. And in today's world, every company is a software company, whether they or us realize it or not.
Steve, what
On that topic of
sorry, Benny. Steve, what
sorry, Vytas.
alternative solutions would you say are there available apart from that Kubernetes side of things? Because I know you said not all companies sort of need it. Would you say there's other sort of approaches that
Yeah, I'd
companies could?
say you could if you like. I'm obviously biased towards Kubernetes and cloud native because that's where I spend all my time. However, you could go the serverless route, right? You could be looking at Lambda or Google Cloud Run tools like that. There's Nomad by HashiCorp that kind of does something similar to Kubernetes, but actually a lot more simplistic. So really, you've got a Swiss Army knife, right? And it's what tool do you want to use? You're going to cut yourself somehow because every tool is a learning experience. But maybe the most complex tool isn't necessarily the one that you need right now. And maybe there's a set of stepping stones you can go on to kind of, create this wonderful Kubernetes platform that you aspire to have. But maybe that's not the starting point. Maybe there's a set of stepping stones to get you there. And I think what ends up happening is people see the shining light at the end and naturally jump to, oh, we need a Kubernetes cluster. We need to deploy all these applications on it. This is what all the cool kids are using, and actually completely miss what they actually need, which is, can we just get a bit more reliability and scalability into our application and platform ecosystem or estate? Sorry.
I think many people, Steve, they see it like a bit of a buzzword in the industry and have done for last 10 years, so is that very much a case then? Do you think it is still a bit of a buzzword when it comes to people's CVs and having it on their LinkedIn profiles and trying to impress people with the word Kubernetes?
I don't think so, right? I think it's not necessarily a buzzword. I think there's many other buzzwords, and I'm almost certain that we'll get into some of them during this podcast. I'm keeping my mouth shut right now on a couple of the ones that I think are buzzwords right now.
AI.
Maybe. But what I'm really trying to say is it's so popular and so many people are using it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for your organization. You have to ask yourself a number of questions about whether it's the right tool for you at this time. And right, I've been to many different companies and I've sat in many different boardrooms with people at multiple levels of the seniority chain, right, all the way up to founders, CTOs, CISOs, etc., saying something along the equivalent lines of, well, I went to insert conference name here and everyone was talking about Kubernetes. Why are we not doing it? Right? Which is completely missing the point, right? The point is, what is your organization not doing very well at the moment and what technology can we use to fix it? Not let's use this technology and try and fix the problem. And it's really, once we start putting business value at the front of every technical conversation, the technical conversation ends up changing. Sometimes the buzzword that you were talking about, Kubernetes, is the right solution. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes maybe we just need a better way of doing auto scaling in our AWS estate, and we don't need Kubernetes at all.
Interesting words there. Very interesting. I'll be sure to have a chat with some other people that in your position, Steve, about that as well. Well, when it comes to leadership, Steve, what makes a good leader for you, in your opinion?
I could talk about this for hours, but I'll try and keep it relatively short. So, a good leader in tech specifically isn't the person with the most technical knowledge or who works the longest hours that we've talked about before. A good leader is someone who could create an environment where others can excel. And I believe the best tech leaders and leaders in general are often not the best technologists. They understand people and can navigate complex dynamics and teams and organizations, right? And a good leader to me kind of breaks down into 5 main points. I'd say, someone who can empower others rather than trying to be the hero, I'd say is the number one for me. Is comfortable with ambiguity and can make decisions with incomplete information. Focuses on outcomes rather than processes. Is willing to have difficult conversations and make unpopular decisions when necessary. And understands that their job is to serve their team, not the other way around. And I think most importantly, a good leader is someone who's constantly learning, but is humble enough to admit when they're wrong. And in tech, things change too quickly to cling on to like outdated ideas and approaches. And sometimes, the leaders have those, and they're, we just need to be humble enough to say, yeah, you're right. We made the wrong decision here.
100%. Steve, what would you sort of, someone transitioning into sort of a leadership role, then what sort of advice would you give them, particularly in the tech industry?
My advice might be a bit unconventional, but here we go. So I would say forget everything that you currently know about leadership. Many traditional ideas about leadership don't apply right now in this fast-paced collaborative world that we currently live in. Your technical skills don't matter as much as you think, right? Focus on developing your emotional intelligence and your communication skills. That's going to take you a lot further in a leadership position than being able to write, the next method in choose your favorite programming language. And don't try and have all the right answers. Like, your job is to ask the right questions and create an environment where your team can find the answers. They're not looking for you to have all the answers. Otherwise, that you wouldn't have a team underneath you. You'd be able to do everything. Embrace failure, right? If your team isn't failing, sometimes they need to push harder and create this culture where failure is seen as a learning opportunity, not something that should be feared. And the one that I'm a big believer in is be radically transparent, right? Share as much information as possible with your team, even when it feels uncomfortable, Like, trust in a team is your most valuable currency as a leader. If they trust you, you're going to be onto a winner. And then challenge the status quo. And for people that have worked with me in the past, they know that I live and die by that. Like, just refrain from accepting that that's how it always has been done as an answer, and kind of be the agent your organization needs to change the way that they're doing things. And the final one for me is take care of yourself, right? Leadership is emotional and can be mentally taxing, and prioritize your well-being as you can, like we talked about before. And I think the best leaders make themselves indispensable. If your team falls apart without you when you're not there, whether you're ill, whether you're on holiday or vacation or whatever, you haven't succeeded as a leader. Your goal should be to create a team that can function and excel even in your absence. And for me, leadership isn't about having power over others. It's about empowering others to achieve more than they thought was possible. And in tech, where innovation and adaptability are crucial, this kind of leadership isn't just beneficial. It's like essential to survive and succeed as a leader.
So then, Steve, dive in more on sort of the technical front then on the cloud native side of things. Then why is Kubernetes an essential part of the cloud native landscape? What's your opinion about that?
So I would say that it's not just part of the Kubernetes landscape. I'd say it's the backbone, right? Kubernetes actually isn't about container orchestration. It's actually just a means to an end, right? What Kubernetes really represents is a paradigm shift in how we think about infrastructure and application deployment. And to me, Kubernetes is essential because it embodies like key cloud native principles. If we think about declarative configuration, immutable infrastructure, API driven operations, etc., etc. But it's not just a tool. It's a philosophy for infrastructure as code and making sure our applications are thought about as distributed systems. But however, like, and this might be a little bit controversial, I believe that many organizations are actually using Kubernetes wrong, right? They treat it like this kind of magic wand that can solve all their problems. But in reality, all it does is end up exposing and magnifying their existing inefficiencies. And Kubernetes doesn't fix bad practices. It never will. It just makes them more apparent and more painful. And like, to me, personally, the true value of Kubernetes lies in not its technical capabilities, but in how it forces organizations to rethink their entire approach to software development and deployment. It's kind of a catalyst for cultural change, and that's why I think it's essential. So those who understand that are the ones that are truly leveraging its power, not the ones that just think it's all about the technology.
Awesome. So then what would you say, sort of in your opinion then, what trends are going to shape sort of the future of cloud native technologies?
I think there's a bunch. Like, off the top of my head, I can probably think about of 5 main ones. I think some of them might surprise people. Like the death of the traditional application, right? Like, monoliths aren't just going to be broken down into microservices. Like, they're evolving into these highly distributed event-driven systems. Like, the future is serverless and event-driven architectures, right? And a lot of companies, startups are going down that route, but I think like these slightly older, I don't call it legacy because it's making money in production, but organizations that are not startups are moving their applications to these event-driven architectures. And I think there's the obvious one, and here comes the word, right? AI-driven operations, right? This concept of AI ops isn't just going to be a buzzword. I really believe that machine learning will increasingly manage our systems, whether that be from auto-scaling to auto-healing infrastructure. Like, don't worry, I don't think we're all going to lose our jobs. I think like human operators will shift from firefighting to strategic decision making. The third one for me is like edge computing goes mainstream, right? If we think about it, the cloud is moving ever closer to the user, and I think edge computing will become a crucial part in cloud native architectures in the future, especially like with the rise of 5G. And then I had to get security in here somewhere, right? So security, I think, is going to shift even more left than it has done already and become this kind of continuous DevSecOps involvement. There you go. There's another buzzword for you. But it won't become a buzzword for much longer. I honestly think it's going to be a fundamental practice, right? Where security will be baked into every step of the development process. And then my kind of final one is the rise of what I call FinOps. There you go, another buzzword. As cloud costs spiral, and I've seen this for myself, like financial accountability is going to become a key part of the cloud native practices, and developers will need to understand the cost implications of the architectural decisions that they're making. And here's a somewhat controversial prediction to kind of leave you with regards to that question, which is within the next 5 years, I think we'll see the emergence of no ops environments where developers can deploy directly to production without these kind of traditional operations involved. And I think this will be enabled by the advancement in AI managing our infrastructure. And the organizations that thrive in this new landscape won't be those with the most, advanced technology. It's going to be the ones with the most adaptable culture and the ability to be able to make these decisions and allow developers to just be able to deploy straight to production. Because if we don't provide business value, then why are we doing and why are we using all this technology?
Steve, is that why you think it's best to be a generalist as opposed to a specialist? Because the need for like a support engineer and a developer are going to be sort of combined in the future. Is that something you think is going to happen when they actually combine job titles and do everything as opposed to one little niche?
Yeah, I think
in the tech
traditionally, right, we've had the security team, we've had the network team, we've had the platform team, we've had the application development team, right? And now in the last, I don't know, like 5-10 years, we've seen this concept of cross-functional teams. But cross-functional teams don't really lend themselves right now to like, let's get security involved, let's get networking involved. It's very much like, let's get a platform engineer in the same team as the developers with a QA, a product manager, and a bunch of others. But I really think that security and operations and networking, et cetera, are going to become part of this cross-functional team. So really, it breaks down all the barriers. So yeah, you could potentially have a silo within your team, but you have the right set of people to be able to make the right decisions. And like in the past, when I've held leadership positions and we worked on transformations, I used to create something called the KET, so the Kubernetes enablement team. And this was a team of individuals from all disciplines in the organization, all the way up to HR, knowing who we need to hire. But it had security people, it had networking people, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the core suite of people that can make almost all decisions apart from financial ones. And that obviously needs to go to another, to another team or the CFO, et cetera, et cetera. But you reduce the amount of time it makes to make decisions, right? And these silos, all that we get ourselves into is this time warp where everything takes forever because someone hasn't seen their email that you sent them 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a week ago. But actually, if we have these teams where you don't need to send emails anymore, maybe you just ping them on Slack, or maybe they're in the same room or on the same set bank of desks as you. You just lean over and shout at them and tell them to take their headphones off and ask them the question.
On that last note you made there, Steve, when it comes to remote working, obviously communication-wise, what do you think is the best way forward in the UK and globally for that?
So if I've got your question correct,
Your own opinion.
you're saying what's the best way to communicate in a fully remote environment? Is that right?
No, I think I'm trying to say sort of what do you think is the best way of working for a dev and sort of ops team together? What communication-wise, is it better to be in the office together, or is it better to be from home and just using Slack? What do you think is more productive for the wider tech company?
That's an interesting question, right? I think there's multiple different answers to that. But for me personally, I can achieve more working from home in like a day than I can from probably 3 or 4 days in the office for a multitude of reasons. Mainly when I've held leadership positions, I'm in meetings, but a lot of meetings are ad hoc meetings that take my time. But when I'm at home, you have to physically try and get hold of me, right? You can't just be like, "Oh, hi, Steve, is there any chance we can have a chat? Maybe we can do it over a coffee, maybe we can go into a meeting room." Like that kind of stops. And in terms of like how to work in what I would call like a fully remote world or like a remote first world is like really kind of establish a dedicated workspace. I think that's super, super important, whether that be like hybrid in the office or whether that be your home setup. Have somewhere where you can go, but also somewhere where you can leave. So like I'm lucky enough that I have an office here in the house. I can close the door behind me and I've left the office, in air quotes. I think the other one is like just overly communicate, right? It's better to over communicate than under communicate. And there's so many people that I've worked with in the past that just under communicate. And when we're all working remotely, questions like, oh, what's X person been doing? What's Y person been doing? Start arising. And, you know, if you were in an office, you would just shout at the person over the desk and ask them the question, right? And it's about not being afraid to do that. And then we've kind of touched on this one before, but like set the clear boundaries between work and personal life. And like the other one for me is like, especially when you're working from home, take breaks, right? There's an interesting, study that says that the best duration for a meeting is 45 minutes because that's the most that someone can concentrate. So my mantra anyway is I can probably do a lot of good work in 45 minutes and then I'm going to give myself a 10-minute break. I call it like a smoking break, but I don't smoke. But I have regular breaks throughout the day where I just go and do something else. And one of the things that I do is, I'm fortunate enough to live on the river. I go and just look in the distance, like very, very far, like down the river, and try and reset my eyes because too many times we're like,
screen time is horrible,
too
isn't
many
it?
times we're
Awful.
like just staring at a screen for 8 hours, like an arm's length away from us. And then when we like our eyes are just so focused on that when we leave, our eyes don't properly adjust. But also like the mental clarity that I can get from just staring at a river and watching like the water just flow past for 5 minutes is actually extremely beneficial. Like some of the most difficult times in my career in terms of like, as an example, letting people go, right? That's an emotionally draining experience for you telling the person that they're letting go, but also afterwards. And like afterwards, I actually found worse than telling them because I wouldn't know how to deal with that situation, right? And there's no one that can talk to you and tell you what's the best way to do that, to deal with that. Sorry, but actually just getting out and looking into space and looking at something else for 5 minutes and just like kind of grounding and centering yourself again after you've just told somebody that news, I think is extremely beneficial.
It's almost zoning out, Steve, isn't it, from reality for 5 minutes? Like, I live in Birmingham, and it's obviously there's not a lot of green space, unfortunately, around where I live. The same for Vytas and Wolverhampton area as well. And I think, for me, future, I want to go live by a river like you. Very lucky man, get to look out onto the waterfront and
It's not
do some snorkeling and that sort of stuff.
it's not all unicorns and pixie dust over here. Don't worry about it. There are it's not perfect. I don't think anywhere is, but yeah, I'm blessed enough to be able to have that on my doorstep. So I kind of
Too many sharks, isn't there? Too many sharks where you are on the river.
yeah, I don't take it for granted, right? But I use it to my advantage, and I think that's one of the things that we need to do, especially when we're working remote, is leverage what's around us. Like if you've got a forest, go walk in the forest every morning for 25, 30 minutes. Turn your phone off. Don't take your phone with you. Like one of the things I'm a big believer in, and I do regularly, is I have this concept of a digital detox. So what we do there is my partner and I, we put our phones in a safe. And this is a bit extreme, I know, but 1 month she knows the pin, the next month I know the pin, right? And
Wow.
the idea is for one weekend we don't touch our phones, we don't touch anything, no laptops, no TV, no phones, right? And it works as multiple different reasons. One is you have dedicated time with your significant other or with yourself, depending upon what you're choosing to do that month, and you just go out and do something else. Like we're too wired to technology, whether that be on like the iPhone and the smartphone are the best and worst invention ever made.
Yeah.
And it can be really, really detrimental to your kind of mental to your mental and physical health. And I think actually doing something as extreme as that, you'd be surprised there is there is actually a whole nother world out there that you can go and explore. You just need to give yourself the chance to do that, and that's about putting the tech down. It will still be there when you come back. You may just have
But Steve, these companies are so clever, the way they get you to be addicted to these things. Like even for me now, 26 years old next week after, and I'm brushing my teeth, Steve, and I have to go on my phone and watch YouTube. Like my brain just can't focus on real life for more than 10 minutes without going on my phone.
I'll tell you an interesting story. So I worked with a well-known casino in the US. I'm not going to name them for obvious reasons. And
Ginseng,
I'm not going to name them for obvious reasons, but that's not the one.
had to guess.
And I got speaking to them over dinner, right? And I was like, why is that the theme tune of the slot machines, right? Why is it so engaging? Like, what I can think about it constantly. And he said, oh, do you know what's equally as interesting? You know the game Crash Bandicoot?
Great game.
That soundtrack on the background of Crash Bandicoot is the same frequency pitches to a slot machine. So they're training you when you're a kid to be ready to be addicted to gambling. There's a hot take for you.
That's crazy, isn't it? That was my favourite ever game, Steve, by the way. Funny enough, I actually bought Crash Bandicoot on the PS5 about 3 weeks ago.
But now you know why you're addicted.
Nostalgia. And yeah, well, I'm not addicted to gambling, luckily. But yeah, it's obviously interesting take, isn't it? Weird one. Very strange. But when it comes to obviously the sort of your career, Steve, in tech, what's been your proudest achievement so far to date?
So people are going to probably think like this is something like really mind-blowing, like getting on stage and talking in front of 1,000 people, 2,000 people, whatever. But it's not about a product I've built, and it's not about a technology that I've mastered. Like, it's about my impact on individuals' lives and careers, right? I've been lucky enough to be a consultant, be a trainer, and I want to tell you a story that encapsulates the power of knowledge sharing, right, in our industry. So I've conducted a number of public Kubernetes training courses, right, throughout the years, going back the last 10 years. And there's one specific instance that I can remember really well. And among the attendees was an individual, right? And he was stuck in a very corporate job. This individual, he came to the training, shirt, tie. You would think that he was in his office. But I could see that he needed to fulfill his potential, right? And I needed to help him feed his passion for cutting edge technology because I could see that he had it. He just needed to be unleashed. And throughout the course, I kept watching my eye on him. Like, I was very, very drawn to him as an individual, because like his eyes would light up at like each new concept that we talk about. Well, we talked about observability, we talked about monitoring, then we talked a little bit about what I think about the rise of service meshes, etc., etc. And his questions kind of became more insightful, and his enthusiasm, like over the 3-day period, kind of like grew exponentially. And then if we fast forward a few months, I received an email that kind of, to me, truly made my career. And he'd left his corporate job and he'd secured a position at a database as a service company, right, working full-time with Kubernetes. And he was no longer maintaining these legacy systems. He was actually at the forefront of cloud-native technologies, building kind of scalable, resilient systems that impacted thousands of users. And my kind of hot take is like the most valuable thing that we can do in the tech world isn't building the next big Apple platform. It's actually empowering others to release their full potential. And like too often we get caught up in the race of like, what's the next innovative technology that I should be learning? Or like, how do I drive the sales in this product? And really, to me, it's about opening doors and showing people what's possible. And like the tech industry talks a lot about disruption, but the most meaningful disruption happens when we change the trajectory of someone's career and life, right? And I'm proud to be a part of that kind of disruption. Like this is just one instance, but there's many, many instances that I could have talked about where I've done that. And that's why like I really enjoy meetups and talking at conferences, right? The conference talk is one part of it, but actually if someone takes like one tiny thing away from a 45-minute presentation, like, and I can help them change their career and give them an opportunity, that's why I do this, right? I don't do this for like clout that I can give you a 3-day training course on, a service mesh provider or whatever. And I think like this experience kind of reinforces my belief that our industry thrives, excuse me, when we kind of openly and transparently share knowledge and empower others. And it's not just about climbing the ladder ourselves. It's about extending that ladder to others and watching them climb the ladder.
I think, Steve, a lot of people actually don't realize that the end of the day is, the tech's built by people, or at least it was before AI started taking over the world. But people are behind everything, aren't they? I think that's why we both love what we do so much as well, because we get to change people's lives for the better.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the worst. On the odd occasion, you don't always get it right, but in the main, it's the meetups are great, aren't they? You spoke at our meetup. That's how we met, Steve. Everyone, by the way, but Steve spoke at our meetup back in June, and just the people that are part of the community, seeing them all happy and chatting together and making new friends, and that's what it's all about within tech, I think. Same as football.
Yeah, it is, right? It's about realizing that you can add and make, the team succeeds and fails together. The individual doesn't succeed and fail, right? Everyone's part of some kind of wheel, wherever it is, whatever they're doing. And it's really, how do you make the biggest impact on the people that surround you to lift them up? Not put them down and climb over the top of them and reach the peak of the mountain. If we all reach the peak of the mountain together, it's much more beneficial, and you feel like you've had a bigger achievement than if you've just climbed on top of a bunch of figurative people to get to the top. Like, once you're there and you look down at them and you think, oh, look at all these peasants trying to climb everything, it's you start to realize that it's actually not that important. And it's not a good position to be in. Like, I was lucky enough, and I've said this numerous times, right? I'm actually glad that my football career came to an end. And that's probably surprising to many people. But looking...
Apart from that, Steve.
Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. You become a person that actually I don't recognize anymore. I became a very arrogant, self-centered person. I had a lot of friends around me, but actually when the football ended, those friends were not real friends. They were just there for, like you said, the money. And when the money dries up, they're nowhere to be seen. But now I understand kind of what true friendship actually is and what building true relationships actually is. And, I've been in a position over the last kind of, 8 to 10 months where I ended my previous contract and I didn't go and look for a new one. And I spent time with significant others, whether that be my partner, whether that be my parents, and just did the things that I wanted to do and make memories, right? And I listened to a podcast once, and we can do it now, actually, and I'd ask everybody that's listening to this to do this. So you start with, how old are your parents? Right? And then you say, okay, well, the average male dies at this age, the average female dies at this age. How many times do you see your parents a year? Right? Then you do the basic maths and you work out, okay, I'm probably going to see them 20, 30, 40, 50 times, right? Before they may pass. And then the guy says, okay, so what do you do with them when you go and see them? And most people say, like I did. Oh, we sit around the TV, we get takeaway, we watch the football, etc., etc., etc. No one's going to remember that when they're not there anymore, right? You're going to remember those big memories, like, oh, I took them on holiday, like, we went somewhere cool. Do you remember that time when X, Y, Z? And I think we need to do this more with the people around us, whether that be your friends, whether that be your family, whether that be your siblings, your significant others, or whatever. It's about making lasting memories. And you can make memories in IT, right? You can make memories at work. But there's certain people that you work with that won't be there in 5, 10, 15 years because you've moved on and you've done something new. Or maybe you've moved country, or you found AI and you've decided to completely pivot and do AI, and you're no longer doing cloud native computing. But it's about building those memories with the people that actually mean the most to you and finding out who they are. That I think is extremely powerful. And that's what I've done kind of for the last 8 or 9 months. I didn't rush back to find the next contract. I actually realized that I was working too much in the previous role, way too much, right? Looking back, and actually I neglected things that were really important to me. And actually just spending a bunch of time and spending the last couple of months doing things with other people has been great, right? And I can go back to work and I can feel like I've fulfilled 2024. I may only be working for like 3 or 4 months of it, but I made the most of the months that I wasn't working. And granted, I'm in a fortunate position to be able to do that. But I think when we talk about ideal work week, maybe it's time when we start thinking about what's the ideal year look like, and what do I do with loved ones and significant others, and how do I make sure that we've got memories? Because memories last a lifetime. Sitting in front of a TV eating a takeaway watching Man United lose, then you're not going to remember that.
Every week as well.
Yeah, it's every week right now.
Couldn't agree more. Obviously, it's just a bit of a shame we have to work so long in our careers before we can actually retire. And by the time you actually get the time to do all these things full time, you're 65, 70 years old and you past your best, shall we say, or sell by date, for example. But it's a shame, isn't it? And I think in the corporate world, for me and Vytas, obviously in our last role as well, we saw how maybe it's not as human focused as it should be in corporate. And then that goes across tech, recruitment, any genre or industry, I think. Do you think, Steve, that corporate world can lose that sense of humanity, I guess, in a way, and focus on sales too much?
Yeah, I've worked for a number of different companies, big and small, right? And it's once you get to a certain scale, you as an individual become a number. You don't become. Do you remember Steve? He works in this team and does this, and he would be the best person to talk to about if we ever had insert problem here, right? You just become, oh yeah, Steve works in this vertical. That's it, right? You just become a number, and the issue with that is you become a number to them, but you also become a number to yourself, and like you lose your sense of identity because you're in a humongous company with, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people, and you lose the thing that makes you unique. So one of the things that I always say, and I've given and been lucky enough to give talks at corporate companies before, is it's about what do you want to do, not what other people want you to do. And once you flick, switch that the other way around, you have a different mentality in the way that you think. Right? What do I want to do this week? You know what I want to do this week? I want to go to the gym 4 days a week this week. Okay. Well, I'm gonna close off all of my laptops from Monday to Thursday at 5:30. It's over, right? I don't care how many people message me. I don't care how many people get in contact with me. They're not going to be able to, right? And I'm gonna use that and dedicate that time to myself. What ends up happening is you start Monday and you have these kind of grand plans of going to the gym 4 days a week or 4 days this week, and then someone books a meeting in your calendar for 6:30 or 6 or 7. And you're like, well, I haven't spoke to this person for like a week. If I don't take this meeting now, they're not going to be able to continue for a week, which is true, right? But not everything has to be a meeting. Like we have to get in this situation whereby we can work asynchronously and at any hour, right? If I want to log on at 10:30 at night and answer emails, that should be deemed acceptable. But it should also be acceptable for me to leave at 4:30 if I want to, right? And the corporate world is so constrained in the way that it works that it doesn't allow for this flexibility. And you kind of have to become the abnormal person that tries to drive either this change within their team or within the organization to put yourself kind of at the forefront and put yourself as the main centerpiece to your life rather than letting, the corporate world consume you. And I've seen that with so many people before. Like people like myself included, right? I was lean as anything when I was 18, 20, 25. And then I took a job where I didn't become lean anymore because I spent too much time sitting down at a chair working on meetings. Right, lucky enough, right now I have a standing desk, which is like a blessing because I'm not sitting down constantly. But I heard an interesting fact that I'll also share with everybody, which is sitting behind a desk is the new cancer. So they're basically they're basically saying that because of the world of completely remote jobs, there's so many people sitting on desks that there's going to be so many problems like in your life moving forward that you're just not even going to see yet because people are so ingrained in what they're doing. They sit there for 8, 10, 12, 15 hours. They don't move. Someone brings...
So like posture,
posture, like but there's like even less significant things like that, right, than like just being able to engage with other people, because you're so used to engaging with people behind a screen. You don't know how to engage with people when you actually get to meet them face to face. So there's like psychological issues
100%.
as well as the kind of obvious physical ones.
Did you feel that after lockdown, both of you, by the way? Did you feel like I couldn't speak to people in person the same as I used to be able to? Like my sort of speaking skills really went like this. Ooh. So it was that same for both of you as well. Just out of interest.
I'll let Vytas go first.
Come on, Vytas.
Give us an example again.
So did your skills go like, boo?
Yeah, I think it was naturally like that. But I think when we was, I don't know, well, you was in a similar position as me, but when we was in lockdown, we still had to work. So
Well, me and you, yeah, and
yeah,
out the whole
we
company.
still sort of kept up a little bit of that social element. But when it came to in person, 100%, like you sort of lose that social touch, and you don't know what to do in a situation, and it becomes a bit awkward. 100%. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think, you know, there was some decline to the fact that we weren't doing in-person communication, but I think like the biggest kind of, to me at least, like social skills that like annoyed me the most was just like, I don't know about anybody else, but I just got video call fatigue. Like I was on conference calls so often that if you had a conference call like with me from anytime from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m., like I would apologize for my inability to be able to communicate effectively. But I think we kind of, you know, we adapted to like how we socialize digitally. And I think like, I don't know if you guys did it, but like we used to do family quizzes on Zoom. Like we all became Zoom experts. You know, I worked in IT, so I was the one that had to figure out how to do Zooms and get all that set up. And I think like there was probably other hidden benefits, like my written communication, I think, probably improved, and my overall like empathy and patience like increased. Like I had to expect people to, you know, be delayed in their responses, and that had to be okay. Like so many times in my, you know, before COVID specifically, I used to run at like 100 miles an hour. I wanted the answer like yesterday. And if I didn't get it in the next 5 minutes, I'd be annoyed. And then you'd have an email in an hour, and then you'd have another one in an hour and a half. And I used to think that no one was working because we were all remote and I couldn't see them on, you know, in the office. So they were all must be like playing football with their kid in the garden or something. But yeah, I think overall it was kind of a blessing and a curse. I think like lockdown. I think it gave us the ability to spend more time with loved ones. Obviously, like loved ones that are outside of the family home, that became a little bit more difficult, and that was, you know, a problem. But I think for tech jobs specifically, it like boomed remote working. I think everyone was asking and after remote working. So we have to take the pros and cons. Like we did get remote working, but we also like lost that social touch for a little bit. But I think everyone's now coming back to conferences and meetups and talking and communicating with people in general. And like the tech community is still, or the tech industry, sorry, is still very much remote. We're now leaning towards a little bit more hybrid, where you can, you know, they want some office presence for obvious reasons.
I think with that as well, Steve, I think you sort of can't take that community element sort of for granted.
Yeah.
That's why it's always so important that, you know, should be grateful for the position that we're in, for sure.
Yeah.
But then going to yourself then, Steve, then just, you know, so the viewers know as well, obviously you founded sort of the Cloud Native Club. How does that look? Why did you create it?
Yeah. So yeah, the Cloud Native Club, the kind of genesis behind it was kind of deep rooted in, you know, a lesson I've learned in both my football career and my journey in tech, like we've talked about in the last hour or so, which is success is amplified by being part of a community or a part of a team. Like just like in football, right? No player achieves greatness alone, right? And in tech, it's the same. Like our growth is supported by the community we engage with, whether that be the community inside of our corporate job or whether that be the community outside when we talk about meetups and things like that. And that's kind of really why I created the Cloud Native Club. And it was about giving back to the community that helped me so much when I was making my transition from football. And I think like my kind of hot take is that the tech industry is like obsessed with this like individual genius, and it's just misguided. It's actually like harmful. Like this concept of the lone wolf developer or the tech guru, like they're just myths that need to be dispelled. Like real innovation and growth happens within a community or within a group of people, like whether that be like a product team or whether that be like a larger organization or startup. And the kind of cloud native club isn't just about learning the latest cloud native technologies. It's about creating a space where people can connect, like support each other and grow together, regardless of where you're located. And like in this increasingly digital and remote world, like building strong, supportive communities like you guys are trying to do is like more crucial than ever. And I think like I started it because I saw a pressing need, right? Like a single place where people can find support, like share their knowledge, but also um, gain the skills that they need to thrive in this fast moving industry. Like traditional education and even some online platforms like miss that crucial element of community. Like you just go and do an online course, which is definitely great, but what about if I've also done that online course and I could like give you that little tiny hint that would take you from like 0 to 5 or maybe 5 to 7, that you wouldn't get by just interacting on an online course. And kind of whether you're starting out in this cloud native journey or you're kind of a seasoned professional, like it's where we help each other like rise. That's the real aim of it. And then as part of that, we're offering and we're doing and delivering 2 different YouTube series. So we have the one called the Project Spotlight, where we get project maintainers to come and talk about their projects. So recently we've had Thanos, we've had Pixie, we're going to have Kyverno, we're going to have Istio in the future. We've got these backed up till the end of the year with different projects. And the idea is that we can inspire others to maybe learn about a project that they've never heard of or never used, right? And how can they get involved? Maybe that's as a user, maybe that's they want to contribute back to the project that they've been using. And then the other one is a series called My Journey, which is about getting tech leaders or people that are well known in the cloud native ecosystem to come and talk about their journey using cloud native technologies. Like, we go back to the beginning, right? So we're going to talk about like as a child, what were you doing when you were 4, 5, 8, 9, etc., and what have you done?
Crash Bandicoot, Steve.
Say again.
Crash Bandicoot, I think.
Yeah, so we kicked that series off on the 9th of October with Joe Bader. So for those of you who don't know, Joe has the first commit on the Kubernetes repo, and he has like a really interesting story. I'm not going to share too many spoilers, but one of them is he actually started with Internet Explorer. That was his first job. Yeah, and the kind of vision is to be the go-to community, right? And that's going to take a lot of time and that's going to take a lot of effort. But like, I'm always a big believer in brick by brick, little by little. I don't want to try and achieve this in a short period of time. It's going to be a long journey. And yeah, I'm not just building a platform. I'm paying forward the support and opportunities I've received throughout my career. And in doing so, I'm hoping that we're creating something that can have a lasting impact.
Yeah, I think that sort of goes very sort of hand in hand. That's why I think both communities sort of get on really well, because I think it's all about knowledge sharing, helping others, and also, one of the main reasons why you're an ambassador of ours, for those that don't know. So, Steve's obviously making a movement, which is really good. So, Steve, from your side, then, how do you stay up to date with the latest developments in the cloud native space?
It's a good question. I don't. Is probably that, like the hot take. I wasn't expecting this answer. I have I choose a niche area or an area that I care about, and I keep up to date with that, and I kind of keep abreast of everything else that's going on. Like, you look at the cloud native landscape on your browser, you have to zoom in to be able to get everything on one screen. Like, I can't possibly keep up to date with everything that's going on. No one can. And we've talked a lot before about these kind of we need to become Y-shaped people, and that's a buzzword that's been used for many, many years, right? But actually having a strong skill and knowledge in one area is what I stay up to date on, that kind of straight line. I don't worry too much about this area here. I just know what's going on, but I'm not overly bothered that, there's been 15 releases of tool X since I last used it. When I get there and I use it, I'll figure it out. But I'm keeping it, like right now I'm keeping abreast of AI, obviously, right? And I think everybody should. It's not, like, caveat, it's not going to take everybody's jobs. It's just going to stop you from doing laborious tasks that you've been doing previously, and actually you can start to do more innovative things. But I think as a consultant and trainer and like evangelist, I want to know AI properly. Like, I don't just want to see it as a prompt where people just end up typing away in something that looks like chat and it just verbally prints you back something that may or may not be accurate. I actually have spent a bunch of time learning how it works underneath the hood. And yeah, my father actually has a maths degree, which has actually become super beneficial when you're trying to learn AI, because everyone's kind of like, oh, it's just pattern matching, which it kind of is. But actually, if you go underneath the covers, it's pretty complicated maths. I did maths at A level, but it's way, way, way more advanced than that. So yeah, I kind of keep abreast of those things and the things that I care about. And kind of one of the selfish reasons why I want to do the project spotlight is because I don't have this time to learn about a breadth of products or projects, and neither does everybody else. So if we can have a condensed space whereby I can go and start to pick and choose and like, oh, what does Pixie do? Oh, the Project Spotlight series, the second one was Pixie. Oh, let me go and have a listen to that. And then from there, I can kind of, if I'm inquisitive enough in that area, I can go and do my own kind of research and reach out to the right kind of people. So yeah, the short answer to that is I don't really. I just look and care about the things that I'm interested in, kind of forget the rest until I need to not forget about it.
Fair play, Steve. In terms of certification, Steve, obviously that's something that a lot of consultancies ask for as opposed to maybe product-based companies. But what do you think are the most valuable ones in this sort of cloud engineering space as a whole?
None of them.
Oh, wow.
That's right. I said it. Certificates in cloud native engineering are at best just a distraction, and at worst a deterrent of like real skill development. Like, let me break down to you why I mean that, because that's quite a strong statement, right? And here's why I kind of believe why certificates are failing us. They're outdated by the time that the ink dries on them. Like, cloud native technologies moves at lightning speed. So by the time a certificate is developed, tested, released, and you've completed it, it's already lagging behind, because that's like a 3-month process, and we've already moved on like a couple. There's been like 5 or 10 releases in 3 months, so they're essentially certifying themselves on yesterday's news. And like a lot of exams or a lot of courses that give you certificates, right? They promote memorization over understanding. So most exam certificates are just glorified memory tests, right? They don't actually assess your ability to solve real world problems, or even to that degree think creatively. And in the world, like, knowing which AWS service to use is far less important than understanding why to use it in the first place. And they create this kind of false sense of expertise. I've seen too many kind of certified engineers, in air quotes, who can't actually build or troubleshoot real world systems. Like, in my interview processes that I do with individuals, we talk about an example scenario where something's broken. And these highly certified individuals that have a load of certificates, they've never actually used this tooling in the real world. So they've never actually seen this type of problem. They just know what tool to choose from the tool chain when we ask a specific question. And I think one of the things that I don't like is that certificates can give you this kind of false confidence that actually does more harm than good. And it's really a proxy for experience, and it's a poor proxy, unfortunately. Like, employers right now who like filter candidates based on certificates are honestly missing out on so many talented individuals who've gained their experience through hands-on experience rather than studying like guides to pass the next exam. And I think the other obvious one is they're often more about vendor lock-in than education, right? Let's be honest, like many certificates are just like thinly veiled attempts by cloud providers to make their services sticky so you have a better understanding of them. They're like marketing tools. They're not really educational tools. So obviously I've like slated certificates and like what you should go after and what exams you should do. So like what do I think is more valuable than certificates? And I'd say like build things, right? Create a complex distributed system from scratch, break it, fix it, scale it. That experience is more worthwhile than a certificate. Then you've got like contributing to open source projects, right? This shows you can work with real code bases and collaborate with real developers. It's a far more it's a far better indicator of skill rather than a multi-choice test. And then write and speak about your experiences, right? Start a blog, give talks like I've done at meetups. This demonstrates not just your knowledge, but your ability to communicate complex ideas. And it's also something you can point back at, and people can actually hear you physically talking and presenting and talking about what you've done previously. Like, yes, I got 85% on this test, but you have nothing to show for it. They don't know what questions are asked or anything like that. And I think it's about embracing continuous learning, right? In my eyes, at least, like instead of studying for a certificate, I'd spend that time experimenting with new technologies, architecting solutions, and kind of solving real world problems, and spend time developing your soft skills, right? I think communication, leadership, and problem solving are far more valuable skills than a technical certificate, right? They're what turns a good engineer into a great engineer. And like in my years in industry, and obviously it's not a huge amount, like compared to some individuals, I've never been impressed by someone's list of certificates, right? But I've been blown away by people who can articulate complex architectural decisions or who have battle scars from debugging like horrific production issues, right? If to me at least, if you really want to stand out in this kind of industry, forget the certificates. Like build things, break things, fix things, share your knowledge. That's how you prove your worth. Um, and like remember what we discussed before. Like your ability to adapt, learn, and solve real world problems is inevitably more valuable than any acronym after your name. Like focus on developing your skills and what you can bring to the table, and you'll be like light years ahead of what I call certificate chasers.
Steve, from your sort of illustrious career, what would you say, like, one piece of advice you would give for a junior, cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer? What would that be?
Well, this is another hot take. I'd say burn your resume, delete your LinkedIn profile, and start everything again. Now, before you kind of dismiss this as kind of crazy talk,
What do
let,
you mean
let
by
me
that?
let me explain. Right. So in this industry, right, your real resume isn't a piece of paper or a digital profile, right? It's it's like a trail of chaos and solutions you leave in your wake, and like incidents and things that you fixed in the past. It's the systems you've broken, rebuilt. It's the 3 a.m. production issues you've solved with a bunch of individuals. It's the kind of code you've contributed to in open source projects. That's your real resume, right? And like why it matters is because breaking things teaches you more than a tutorial ever will, right? When you break a system, you're forced to understand it to the fundamental level in order to be able to fix it. And that deep understanding is invaluable, right? I've interviewed too many people in the past that think they know about the solution. And I talk about an example or an incident that we've had in the past, and their knowledge just crumbles away because they've just used it superficially, like at the top kind of level. And if like by focusing on these kind of real world problems instead of polishing your LinkedIn profile, like you're actually building skills. You're not just appearing to have these kind of skills, because when you interview with people, they don't care that you know about this technology. They care about what you've done with it and what lessons you've learned from using it. And kind of this approach kind of enforces you and to engage with the community. Like when you break things, you'll have to ask questions, you'll have to join discussions, you'll have to collaborate with other people. And we talked about this before, right? The ability to be able to use your soft skills is extremely valuable, and probably more valuable than any list of connections on social media, or name your favorite tool here. And then I'm one of the things I'm kind of a big believer of is like push yourself outside your comfort zone. Like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I've used that phrase before. I remember I used it on the talk that I gave at your guys' meetup, right? And comfort is the enemy of growth, right? The cloud is always evolving, and you need to evolve with it. And if you don't evolve with it, you're just going to be left behind. And this kind of mindset really turns failure into opportunities. Like, every broken system is a chance to learn. So now I'm not literally telling you to go and delete your online presence, right? I'm not doing that. What I'm advocating for is like this shift in focus and mentality. Like, stop obsessing about how you appear on a piece of paper, what your online profile looks like, and start obsessing about gaining real hands-on experience, because that's what's going to get you a job. That's what's going to differentiate you from the next person. People care about the experiences that you had and what value you can bring to the organization. And like, creating a blog like I did many, many years ago, and don't read it too much because the grammar's horrific, but is about documenting failures and learnings, right? And contributing to open source projects. And however small and minute you think that blog post is that you wrote, if you can help one person, great. But they're the kind of things that recruiters and like tech leads are going to go and look at when they're looking at your profile versus the next person. And you know, the most well-respected engineers that I've worked with in the past, they don't have the prettiest CVs. They're like battle-hardened problem solvers who've been in the trenches, broken things, fixed things, kind of lived to tell the tale. And if you have that kind of life experience from a technical standpoint, and you can open up that Pandora's box in an interview, you differentiate yourself immediately from the next person. So like, any junior engineers that are listening to this podcast, I challenge you, go break something right now, learn from it, fix it, and then break something even bigger than the last thing you broke, right? That's how you're truly going to grow in this field. And if it's badly broken, you don't know how to fix it, you can reach out to me.
Don't break your bones, just for health and safety. Don't bother breaking your bones. Steve, when it comes to really good points, by the way, on that there. When it comes to actually showcasing what you've built, broke, scaled, etc., instead of just having a CV and having a LinkedIn profile, how can they show that as a junior? Would it be through GitHub account, through like code they've already built? How would they showcase that?
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about that a little bit before, right? There's the obvious ones. Start a blog. Put the blog at the top of your social media profiles, whether that be GitHub, whether that be Twitter, whether that be LinkedIn, right? And participate in these virtual events and webinars, right? There's so many good junior developers that I know that are just too scared to get on stage, right, and talk about what they've done. And that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, and I've done in the past, right, is mentoring these individuals that are too scared to get on stage. And it takes a lot to be able to do it. Like, I did it the first time. Like, if anyone remembers this, they'll remember how terrible it was. It was a 30-minute presentation, and I finished in 12 minutes, and I just stood there waiting for questions.
Wow.
I actually got a very good job from it somehow. I have genuinely no idea how that happened. There was the right person in the room at the right time, I guess. But yeah, that's one other one. Like you said, put it on GitHub. Like, I have when I was looking for certain types of job, I used to have my GitHub username on the top of my CV. Right? Naturally, people become inquisitive. They click the link, right? I also had a very basic website, right? So I used to use an an open source tool for that. I stored the code on GitHub. I had it running using GitHub Pages, right? And all of this is like showcasing something, but actually you're marketing yourself, but learning at the same time how it works. So you have a bit of experience to lean on when you come to the interview. Oh, I clicked on your your website. I was interested to hear about XYZ ABC. Oh, let me tell you about that website. I use GitHub Pages. I'm using GitHub Actions to make sure that I'm linting it correctly, right? And there's like a little story that can be told from something very, very simplistic. And I think the other one really is just leverage the tools that you have available to us, right? AI is going to change the game. Get comfortable with it. Start to become a prompt engineer, right? In Kubernetes, we all talk about how we're YAML engineers. I think now we're going to be in a world of prompt engineers, and really get AI to fine tune your bio, right? That the bio is the first thing that people see, whether that be your online presence, whether that be your CV. That is the thing that needs to grab them. There needs to be a hook in there for them to become inquisitive. And then honestly, like for junior engineers, it's get out there and get comfortable being uncomfortable. Get in front of people, start talking to people. If you see me at a meetup, or you see, you two at a meetup, don't be scared to come up and say hi. Right? I've got tons and tons of experience, but doesn't mean. And one of the things that I pride myself on is that I'm approachable, and I know you two guys are as well. Like we were chatting about football and many, many things before I got on stage, right? It's not just about technology and stuff. And I think it's just about being transparent and getting familiar and happy and confident in just talking about what you've done. And one of the things that I always tell the people that I've mentored in the past is, you may think the experience that you have is very, very small, but it's still experience. And if you just have the confidence to actually express that, whether that be on a stage behind a lectern or whether that be just talking to someone at a meetup, like those connections and the community that you have around you are going to be so, so valuable. And if you're known as someone that shares and is not going to like gatekeep, there's another buzzword, like the skills and the understanding that you have, people are going to come to you for advice, and your network will last a lifetime. It's just, I think the main crux of it, to answer your question without going on a massive ramble, is use tools like GitHub, but I actually think like a personal website is really, really useful, like just to showcase it. Something very, very simple. There's tons of templates out there that you can leverage, and learn something new by building that, and then talk about that.
Right, Steve, do you have any questions for us at all? Any questions?
What's next for you guys? Specifically with the DevOps Society.
Vytas?
You can take it, mate.
A little bit dizzy now from a longer screen staring, I think, as Steve mentioned earlier on. I think, we've got a few events coming up before end of the year. We've got one happening in Birmingham. It's our first Midlands-based event. That's on the 26th of September with version 1 at their offices. That'll be good fun. And then we've got 2 in Manchester as well in November. One's at the Auto Trader HQ. So that'll be quite good in Manchester. And one's with Create Future as well. And we have one event that's heavily focused around the woman in tech sort of area that we're really keen to sort of support with. That it's more around collaboration and inclusion and the future of technology, and really creating an inclusive environment. So we've got a panel discussion on that happening in October on the 17th in London. So that'll be really good fun. By the way, we welcome all genders and everyone to come along to that. It's not just about women, it's about everyone sort of working together to create an inclusive future for tech. So that'll be really good as well. But that's it for us in terms of the rest of this year. As Steve knows, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind building events. So give ourselves a bit of a break in December, and then obviously go back again in January with a few more. So that's it for us really for this year. Vytas, anything else from you on that?
No, I mean, apart from that, obviously we've got quite a few podcasts as well booked in. So that should be good. And we're just trying to be active on like the socials, and giving people sort of content and sort of information, and just help the sort of general public. But it's exciting times. There's a lot of stuff happening. But it's going to be a busy few months for sure.
Yeah, I have a newfound respect for content creators now.
Oh God, it's hard work, isn't it, Steve?
Oh man,
even making the graphics on the Canva, it's a lot of hard work.
It's
simple things
just
well.
like scheduling all of the social media posts, and then someone asking you if they can change the date, and then remembering all of the previous ones that you've scheduled because you need to change the date by 1 or 2 days. Like that, and to be honest with you, just creating all the content is time consuming, but it's paying back the help that everyone else has given me in the past. So I don't mind, but it is time consuming.
100%. I think that's why a lot of the communities don't post regularly on LinkedIn, because obviously it just takes a lot of time and effort and mental drainage as well, away from your day job as well. So we get it. I think obviously with just being the two of us, it's a bit of a slog at times, but it's all worth it. at the meetup, Steve, as you saw, like seeing people, junior developers chatting with people like you, Steve, and it can be quite intimidating when there's a gap in knowledge and experience sometimes. And I think that goes for every industry, and recruitment for us too. I think when we were younger, probably looking at director level people, we were a bit scared to go and speak to them. But I think now, they're just people. End of the day, I think people forget that, it's people. So don't be scared to say hello to people like Steve at meetups, and you're in good hands. You're in good hands. So yeah.
Good stuff, Steve. Look, appreciate your time. Obviously, that was some really insightful, information that you shared. How can the listeners, connect with you and sort of follow your journey?
I'd love to continue this conversation beyond the podcast. And again, thanks guys for having me on. So some of the best ways to connect with me and the Cloud Native Club is follow me on Twitter. I'm at swade1987. For the Cloud Native Club, you can join the community at community.thecloudnativeclub.co.uk. Cloud Native Club has a Twitter account, obviously. It's at Cloud Native Club. And our YouTube is again at Cloud Native Club. And then for all of my contact information, reach out on stephenwade.co.uk. Yeah, reach out, ask questions. Let's grow together in this exciting cloud native ecosystem.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your time, Steve. See you at the next one.
Yes. See you later, mate.
See you guys.
Let me stop it now. Bloody hell, 1 sec. Let me stop it. Let me laugh at you idiot. Stop the recording.